to the Plan Commission meeting, and I'm going to call the meeting for the March 9th, 2021 to order. And first item, Abby, is the roll call.
Bruce? I saw Bruce.
Here.
Murray?
He is here.
Present. Paulson?
Here.
Ramsey?
Here.
Schaefer?
Here.
Slavish?
Here.
And Brar is present.
All right, so we got everyone here, full Plan Commission. All right, so the first item is the approval of the minutes. So need a motion to approve.
Schaefer moves.
All right,
Murray second.
the way to go. Any questions or comments? Any changes? Looks pretty good. Okay, then all those motion is to approve the Plan Commission minutes for February 23rd, 2021. All those in favor of the motion to approve say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So motion passes unanimously. We are on to the agenda item number 1, recommendation for rezoning for R1 single family to Planned Development District PBD. General Implementation Plan, Koteshwar, Katukam, 7103 Twin Sunset Road. Who's going to take it, Abby, or who is the?
I did the staff report, Mayor.
Okay, Mark, go ahead. You're it.
So in your packet tonight, you see the staff report as well as the revised submittal from Kotesh. This was deferred at your January 13th meeting. I think it was the first meeting in January following a public hearing. You deferred action to allow the applicant time to work with city staff. And he has submitted a revised site plan, which shows the minimum setbacks, maximum building footprint, maximum impervious surface area. He also has provided images showing other buildings in the area, in the Madison area, that are similar in the concept of what he's proposing here. He does continue to propose a two-lot subdivision, each containing a 2-family residence, so a duplex. And in my view, reviewing the revised submittal, the plan remains consistent with what was before you at the public hearing 2 months ago. There are a couple issues that still need to be worked out if this plan is to move forward. One is making sure that utilities are extended beneath Twin Sunset to the northern lot. And I believe he has submitted I think a site plan. It doesn't probably show it quite as well as it could, but he understands that the the sewer and water mains need to be put in Twin Sunset to serve the northern lot as a main, not as a lateral. That was feedback from from David Sarbacher, our utility manager. And then the other issue is the number of driveways and access off of Twin Sunset Road, which is a Town of Middleton road. And so we have advised that he work with the Town of Middleton to obtain their consent. Should this move forward, he'll need their consent to connect driveways to Twin Sunset. Stormwater is also a third concern, making sure that whatever moves forward has more than adequate stormwater management. And he has worked with Gary Huth, our stormwater engineer, and in the the staff recommendation, there's some language there to identify the stormwater concerns. That's all I have. I don't know if, Mayor, if you wanted to hear from the applicant again. Abby, can you think of anything else that I may have missed?
I think that covered it, Mark.
Okay, thanks.
Well, if you covered it, well, now it's open to the Plan Commission for any questions or comments.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Mark, a couple technical questions on the utilities and infrastructure here. If the town denies the 3 driveway permits, right? then is the applicant, do you know, able to reorient the site plan to have one drive off of Evergreen that would serve all 4 properties? Or is that, that would really change the design of this building, right?
Yeah, that is another concept that I had thought of too. I guess that is, that would put the driveway along the western lot line, which, I would presume the neighbor there would not be as supportive of that. And it would involve a shared driveway to the northern lot. Of the 2 lots, it would be the northern lot would then have an easement across the southern lot. The advantage of that is that the garages then are behind the homes, the residences, which from a Twin Sunset street frontage standpoint is something we always prefer, is to have the driveways in behind, but then of course they don't have a rear yard for each of the residents either. Or at least it's not the same type of rear yard, I should say. So yeah, I would say that would be another option on the table, Commissioner Paulson.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, for covering that. Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, we did talk about that because that was one of the biggest problem. If the town says no to 2 driveways, yes, there is an option.
And just so I'm clear, the 2 units that face Evergreen would have similar frontage, but one of them would have a front entry garage and one would have a side entry garage, in the same way that the 2 units on Twin Sunset, as it turns around the corner, they would have the same frontage, but or kind of front facade, but one would be a front entry garage and one's a side entry garage? Or would there be the 2, at least in this diagram that Mark has up, the 2 houses on the eastern part of the 2 parcels, they would both face to the east and the others would face north and south. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this was guidance that we had provided based on feedback we had heard from the Plan Commission at the last meeting. The idea of not having two garage doors facing the same direction, but to have each have a frontage north and east, as you said, have 2 frontages facing 2 streets. So there would be 2 fronts to the home, basically, okay, to the residents. I mean, that's the concept. And so I suggested that Kotesh provide us some photos of others in the area, and he did do that. There's a couple of, I don't remember where that one is.
So that from each side you look at it, it looks like a single family home.
Right.
Because there's garages that are offset 90 degrees from each other.
Right.
Okay. And then the only other question was, to make sure I heard you correctly, there's currently a sewer main along Evergreen, right?
Correct. Sewer and water main.
Why can't they just have a lateral that goes to all 4, that goes, towards the 2 parcels on Evergreen and then cuts underneath in the backyard with an easement to the other 2? Why would they have to have a sewer main in Twin Sunset? Because Twin Sunset does not have a sewer main.
Correct.
So presumably to dig up Twin Sunset to install a main is incredibly expensive.
Our public works, our sewer and water utility manager, Dave Sarbacher, advised that this was the only proper way to move forward. You can't put in an easement a sewer lateral, or is it water? I can't remember which. One of the 2 needs to be served directly from the main, and the main needs to be in the public right of way, according to Dave Sarbacher.
Well,
yeah,
that
was. Sorry. So that's what I heard. I think with Public Works and Mark, and we met some time back in a call, and there are like almost 100 feet I have to run, and for each feet, I think $100 for water, $200 for sewer, so it's $300 per square feet. So that costing me close to $100,000. That's what I heard. Upfront cost.
I mean, this is a challenge we come up with in other places when we want to have 2-unit buildings, duplexes, become 0 lot line divisions, is the interpretation of the Public Works is that every building that's a separate parcel needs to have its own lateral directly to a main, and the main's in the right of way. And that just becomes incredibly expensive, almost cost prohibitive for your project. So I guess I'll leave the comments there. I see others have questions, but
I would say just to add, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Kotesh. You're the applicant. Oh, the mayor, I'm sorry.
No, Mark, go ahead. So it's all
Well,
right.
I just was going to finish what Commissioner Paulson's comment, just to respond to that. Page 7 of the staff report has the policy of the city. It says, the city requires each unit to have separate water and sewer lateral connections. At a minimum, the water lateral serving each unit must directly connect with the water main through the lot it serves. No water lateral can extend across a separately owned parcel. So it's water. I misspoke earlier. I said
and that's a city policy, not a state building code requirement?
I think it's a state. I don't remember right now, Kurt. It certainly is a city policy, but I believe it comes from the state. And then also the other point I was going to make is that the concept here of extending the main is that then in the future, if any other property owner on Twin Sunset wishes to annex to the city and connect to the city infrastructure, then the main, then they need to just continue where the stub is. Otherwise, they would have to pay for that all the way to Evergreen Road, which wouldn't really be fair. So that's, I think, the thinking.
Yeah, I'm just going to flag this as a possible problem. If we think about at various places in the city, if people want to develop 0 lot line townhouses or 0 lot line duplexes so that they're separate parcels, so that for mortgage purposes, they can sell them as separate entities rather than a collective entity. This is going to be extremely cost prohibitive. And that's why most of the duplexes that we do have in the city are 1 parcel, 1 lot, 1 mortgage, because you can serve it with 1 lateral rather than 2. So.
Well, Kurt, you raised some very good points here. So if it moves forward, I guess you could help out the applicant and Mark. So I think, and if you think that, something which we need to change, we are rewriting that zoning. I don't know if that's involved or not. Whatever.
If it's a state building code, we can't touch it at all. But the only other alternative is to have it be 1 lot with 4 units in kind of like a PDD. That's the only way around this. So I'll stop now.
Well, you are the expert in this area. What one part which I do like is that they look like single family homes. That is the part which I'm happy about. Okay, so the other commissioners.
Mayor, this is Mike. Mark, I had a question, I guess to follow up on Kurt's question. So if the developer has to build a main across or under Twin Sunset, does that main need to be sized accordingly to allow for future connections by others in the subdivision? And if so, I can't imagine that's going to be much cheaper than extending, the line off of Evergreen, which I know you can't do, but, from a cost standpoint, I think that is also going to be a significant challenge.
This is a little bit outside of my area, obviously Public Works,
Yeah.
but I believe we have a certain minimum main size. And I would venture to bet that the minimum main size would be sufficient to serve the entirety of Twin Sunset. I want to say a 4-inch main, but I might be guessing. I just know that every street in this, the minimum size, we have a certain minimum size, and that probably will suffice here. So I don't think there's an extra upcharge, if you will, that he's not paying for. He wouldn't be paying for, I don't think, I understand your concern, but I don't think it's an upcharge.
So this is
It's really, it's just a concern for the developer.
But nobody seems to be paying attention to him.
Okay, I apologize, John and then Randy. So I fell asleep and I'm awake now.
That's right.
Okay, John and then Randy.
Right.
Randy Bruce.
I have lots of issues. I've always had issues with and I still feel I don't understand why we're being so driven and so compelled to try to do a PDD and try to make this work. This really, I agree with the town of Middleton, that this is essentially a spot zoning issue for one developer and one piece of land who is having trouble with dealing with the issues of the land and making money for it. The entire 100% of the population, the people around there have said they're against it. I don't buy the rules. I've been out there 5 or 6 times, the sense that it's right next to all those other houses, but they're down a different road. And all those pictures we saw of houses have nothing to do with what's in this neighborhood. The apartments on the north side are completely covered by a hill. This is a single little thing. If we're looking at trying to do infill, we're adding 2 families to the city of Middleton. I don't see that this is worth the battle and all the effort we're going to set precedents to rezone one single lot for one person in a neighborhood where there's not a single person who wants this to happen. I just wanted on record that I think this is really a bad idea, and we're just spending a lot of time spinning wheels for something that I think is a mistake. So I'll be quiet. That's my word on this.
Thank you, John. Randy?
Yes, thank you. I understand John's concerns. I went out to look at the site as well, but I came to a different conclusion than him. I think I looked at the properties in the immediate area, not just on Twin Sunset, but also within the Hidden Oaks. And looking at it on a whole, I think this is the exact kind of place that the city is looking for, to do a little bit of infill. And if we want to preserve our agricultural lands and stop the spread of sprawl, then we're going to have to be sensitive and look at infill sites such as this. I don't think, if I looked at the staff report suggested that the density that we're looking at on this site is similar to the density in Hidden Oaks, which is just across Evergreen Road. So I don't think it's a matter of density really that makes it inappropriate. I'm trying to figure out what it is that makes it inappropriate. I do agree with Kurt that the requirement to put the main under the road seems very expensive, and I think I'd like to ask Public Works to see if we can't do the main in an easement, keep it a public easement, so that and then have laterals come off of that, or to have the main be placed in the right of way in Twin Sunset, but not under the pavement. That might help us as well. A couple of comments that I did have about the design of the property and the GDP is there are a number of existing trees on the site, and it would be, I think many of the trees will lie in the yards, the front yard or side yards, and they're substantial trees. So if this moves forward, I'd want to make sure that the trees were surveyed and that we had some plans in place to keep the trees. I would also like to see the design of the structure be as residential as possible, and to take some architectural cues from the surrounding neighborhood in terms of materials and style. I liked what Kurt had to say about keeping each street frontage having a garage door and an entrance, for each unit, so that it really looks like from the street like individual single family homes. And I think that would be successful. I don't know if the building footprints themselves are going to be the 40 by 34 or 36 feet that's shown on the drawing, or if that's just the maximum extent of the footprint, which makes sense to me, that in the final design that the footprints might be smaller, but they shouldn't go outside of those extents. Then the one last question I have for staff is the town had a consultant write a letter, and in it they talked about just confirming that the rezoning would be consistent with the intergovernmental agreement. Has staff looked into that?
I haven't recently consulted the intergovernmental agreement, not in the last month or so. Abby's looked at it. I don't know if it was recently, but we're generally familiar with the agreement, of course, but we didn't look at it. I didn't look at it specifically for this lot. So
Yeah, the intergovernmental agreement that the city has with the town of Middleton essentially dictates the area beyond which the city has subdivision and plat review. I don't think that there's any area that the town of Middleton would have jurisdiction over in terms of reviewing the city's ability to subdivide property. I mean, I didn't go and double check that, but it seems well outside the bounds of anything that's covered in the city's intergovernmental agreement.
I agree with that 100%.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Mark. Anyone else who may want to speak at this time? Okay, Kurt Paulson.
Yeah, I was just going to follow up. I mean, I guess the contrary view of Commissioner Schaefer's point is that we understand that a kind of larger lot, single family only, is appropriate when a parcel is in the town and is not served by public water and sewer. But it's generally our principle that when a property annexes into the city, it assumes an urban level of development because of urban public services, water and sewer. And I guess the other question, not to redesign everything, I just want to throw out a possibility, because I know that the applicant, when he came through, wanted both of these to be attached housing. And that's why we settled on the kind of duplex that looks like a single family with separate drives. But would it reduce some of the visual impact to the neighbors if these were just 4 single family homes instead? That adds a little bit to his cost, and his costs are already pretty high. And it's hard to know what we'll come up with in our future zoning. The comprehensive plan we adopted did zone this as established neighborhood, which depending on how we revise the zoning might allow for smaller lot sizes for single families. So perhaps 4 could fit on there. Or perhaps duplexes will become more established in some neighborhoods. So I just want to throw that out there. I have no idea if that would even be feasible at this time, but some of that detached product, I don't know how much is saved by making 2 units attached with a 0 lot line as opposed to separate. I mean, obviously it's the cost of separate walls and engineering.
Thank you, Kurt. John Schaefer.
Yeah, thank you. Kurt, while I agree with part of what you guys are saying, there's still fundamentalness of it doesn't matter what city policy is. There's a neighborhood, there are sidewalks, there are people who live in these, and they look across the street at their houses. I was always in favor of splitting it into 2 single family lots and doing that. But I guess I'm concerned, maybe because I'm newer on the commission, but we've not heard one single argument from the owner of the property as to why this should be done, except for financial reasons. And it seems like we're making the excuses to help cover the fact that it's too expensive to do this, it's too expensive to do that, it's too expensive to do this. So the city's supposed to somehow roll over and roll over the neighbors and roll over this whole thing to appease the fact that the owner of the property's kind of in trouble financially on this thing. And I don't know that it's our job to help resolve that. And so I'm trying to tread a balance between the two. I think I'm in a minority here, but I've been thinking about that a lot.
Thank you, John. Now the discussion is only open to the commissioners. Okay, so I know Mark and Kendall have a raised hand, but it's only for the commissioners. So Any other plan commission members? Okay, any other plan commission members? Okay, well, all right, so then need a motion.
And Mayor, the motion that I see here is to, and I'll make it, I'm just reading on the staff notes here, to determine that the proposed GIP, the one submitted 3/5/21, is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, and to recommend to Common Council a rezoning to PDD GIP with the contingencies listed in the staff comments. Do you want me to read them all or just take them from the staff comments?
No, I think we can all see it. All the plan commission members, they're published, so it's okay. So Abby can put that in there, so. Okay, need a second?
This is Maria, second.
Okay, so the motion by Kurt Paulson, second by Jennifer Murray. Any questions or comments now? Any questions or comments now? Okay, so the motion by Kurt Paulson and second by Jennifer Murray. This is to approve as it is recommended by the staff in staff report dated 3/5/21.
No,
So, pardon me?
I need somebody to listen to this. Can you hear me? This is Melissa Dahman.
Please, yeah, this is not a public hearing. I'm sorry. So this is for the plan commission members to participate. Okay.
So
Okay.
Mr. Schaefer, could you please reiterate that nobody in the neighborhood wants this done? I don't know why all of us that are saying no don't count. An 80-person petition that said no. The entire town of Middleton Board of Directors advised no, don't rezone this. All of the Twin Sunset residents advised no, don't do this. And Mr. Schaefer is the only one who can see this. What is this? If the owner wants to make $300,000 to $350,000 each off of 4 places, that's $1 million, 400,000. He's gonna laugh all the way to the bank and we're gonna be the ones to suffer. That's not right. That is not affordable housing.
Okay,
I
thank you.
certainly can't afford that
Thank
housing.
you. Thank you. Thank you. So any other further question or comments from the plan commission members? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
Aye, opposed, Schaefer.
Okay, so the motion passes 6-1. Okay, we are on to item number 2. It is the specific implementation plan modification for design changes. Middleton Market and Aviary Apartments 7622 Lisa Lane. Abby?
Yes.
Mayor, may I make one comment quickly just for the public, since there was public
Sure.
here, just to help? So what happens now with that motion is it goes to the Common Council as a recommendation for a rezoning. So this will go before the Common Council and there's public comment at the beginning of that council meeting. It's not a formal hearing, but there's public comment at the beginning of the council meeting, just so that the public understands the process. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Really appreciate that.
Yep.
To everyone, so when it comes to the public hearing, when it goes to the Common Council, now you will have a time to speak. Thank you. Okay, so Abby?
Yes, so this was discussed pretty extensively at the Plan Commission meeting on January 26th. And I think that the commission, working with the developer, Robin Farrow, came up with a really good solution to the design changes that are happening as the Middleton Market project is being constructed. There was one elevation that was not included in your packet, and that is Unit F west side, so the west side of the market. And so Daphne's sharing that on your screen so that you have a chance to take a look at that. But otherwise, staff is comfortable with all of the changes that were negotiated during the January meeting, and we're recommending approval as a minor SIP modification.
Okay, any questions or comments from the Plan Commission members at this time? I don't see any hands. Any questions or comments from the Plan Commission members? Okay, then I need a motion to approve
Schaefer moves.
as a minor SIP modification. Need a second?
Ramsey, a second.
Okay, any further questions or comments? The recommendation is the minor SIP modification to the SIP for the Middleton Market and Apartment 7622 Lisa Lane. The Plan Commission talked about it earlier in January 26th meeting. Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we are on to item number 3. That is the concept review, initial discussion of date number 5, project plan amendments number 1. Abby.
Sure. Well, TIF District 5 is really beginning to see a significant amount of development. It was a little bit slow to start during the recession, but now there are several development projects that are coming online, including the Middleton Market project, that one being the largest. And our staff is proposing that it might be a good time to take a look at our first amendment to the TIF district. So TIF District 3 has seen, I believe, 10 amendments now, including the most recent one we did last year, where we subtracted just over $100 million in valuation and returned it to the general tax base. The purpose of this amendment would be to really take a look at properties within the TIF district that are not likely to redevelop or see any additional investment, remove those properties from the TIF district, which would enable us to extend the district to cover other properties where we might be able to see some redevelopment activity. So this first map that Daphne is sharing here is showing the parcels that we're proposing to remove. And so these are the ones that are crosshatched in orange. It's primarily the Spring Tree apartments, and you know, that's a huge apartment complex with an out-of-state owner that has seen some recent investment and some fixing up of the units. It's not going to become more dense than it is now, and it's not likely to redevelop. So if we can subtract Spring Tree, that would get us you know, some ability to add some properties in, which we can't otherwise do because we're pretty well over the state's value cap on the percentage of assessed valuation that you're able to have within a TIF district. If we remove Spring Tree due to contiguity, we also need to remove the properties along both sides of Amherst Road. Those also are brand new homes along the west side, and along the east side, they're homes in really good condition and they're not likely to redevelop. The reason that they were in the TIF district initially is because of the west side, and that project was one of the first redevelopment projects that the city participated in to create some affordable housing along the west side. So if we can remove these properties, we can then go to the next map, and it would enable us to add some properties, primarily some properties that are shown in blue that are west of the Beltline. They are currently in TIF District 3, but because the life of TIF District 3 is 6 years shorter, we thought it might make sense to move those over to TIF 5 because they've been in TIF 3 for a long time and they haven't redeveloped, or they haven't developed yet. But they are proximate to, you know, Spectrum Brands and some other large employers. So there might be a possibility for some more employment base on those blue parcels. The parcels that are in purple on the north side of the city, the reason for adding those is primarily due to public infrastructure needs in those areas. We need to extend Bellefontaine from Misty Valley west to connect up with Parmenter Street. And, you know, whether it ends up being a 4-lane as was initially planned, or if it's just a 2-lane road, there is some public infrastructure that needs to be improved in that area. We also would like to add the 2 parcels further south of the Studio West property. And the reason there would be for any stormwater improvements the city may decide that we want to make in that location. And then moving over to the east side of the city, kind of in the Lake Street area, there are some real opportunities for redevelopment and investment in that area. And actually, after we've created this map, we learned of a project that will be coming before the Plan Commission at your next meeting for the Captain Bill's property, and that would be a redevelopment of, you know, the old restaurant into some multifamily housing. So we think that there are lots of opportunities along Lake Street. It's the city's only lakefront property that's publicly owned, and I know our public lands director, Matt Amundsen, has a lot of really creative ideas for improvements we could make in that area, and there are a lot of opportunities there. Subsequent to releasing the packet, we heard from, we had a meeting with Kurt Paulson this afternoon and Mike Davis, our city administrator, and discussed an opportunity that we may have to extend TIF 5 along Century Avenue further to the west. There are a couple of properties in the 6900 block of Century Avenue just west of the Pick and Save parking lot that have been discussed for years as a potential redevelopment site, but there are some challenges there. And we kind of took a look at all of Century Avenue, and we thought that there might be a way for us to extend the district to capture those properties in the 6900 block, but also some other properties along Century Avenue that, you know, could potentially redevelop in the future. We would probably need to avoid the Pick and Save because that property is valued at about $4 million, and that would probably push us over the amount that we're going to be able to add. But we could put in, for contiguity purposes, we could put the Middleton Glen senior housing in, not because there's going to be any changes to that building, but it is a tax exempt property. And so that would be a pretty easy one to add in without going above the 15 million that we're subtracting, because that's kind of the hard cap, is when we subtract properties, we can only amend the district to add in properties that are below the threshold of what we are subtracting. So this is just kind of an initial concept to discuss with the Plan Commission. We want to talk with the Finance Committee and Council about it as well. If we were to go forward to amend the TIF district, we probably wouldn't complete the whole process until, you know, the fall or maybe even early winter of this year, because there are quite a few steps involved. We have to get the Joint Review Board involved and the other taxing jurisdictions. That's all I have, just a concept for you.
So Abby, you're thinking of areas west of the Stagecoach? Is that what you have in mind?
Yes, so there are a couple of single family homes on the north side of Century Avenue that are just west of the Pick and Save. And we thought if we could get it as far west as those properties, but maybe even looking at kind of crossing Century Avenue, depending on the side of the street where we might want to focus investment. We might be able to get there. We haven't crunched the numbers yet because this just came up this afternoon in a meeting with Kurt, but it's something we'd like to at least take a look at.
So, but you wanted a continuity, so you're going to put rest of a lot of the other parcels in there then?
Yeah, we would need to put at least one lot depth on either the north side or the south side of Century Avenue, all the way over to get to that 6900 block. So we would want to go out and take a look at, you know, are there properties that actually might be inclined to take advantage of being in the TIF district and have some new investment, or are there, you know, higher value properties that we need to avoid? We would probably want to talk with some property owners, and that all is yet to be done.
So you're talking about an acre, or how many properties?
It would probably end up being, let's see, probably 20 parcels.
Oh, okay.
Because they're smaller, you know, they're smaller pieces of property.
20 parcels on West Century Avenue.
20
So-
parcels along Century, yep. On either on the north side or the south side, with the ultimate goal of getting over to the north side.
There are probably a lot more on the south side than on the north side.
That would potentially redevelop. Yep, I agree with that. So we would need to maintain contiguity within the TIF district, and we can't just run the district along the roadway. So you can't use the road for contiguity purposes. You have to have property. So that's kind of the tricky part, where we would just need to go in and look at the parcels and what their assessed valuation is and whether we would even be able to get there. I mean, we had a work session with our TIF PMT team, and we tried to get this TIF district extended down to University Avenue, because I think that there's a lot of interest in that corridor right now, and we're starting to see vacancies. But we couldn't get it extended that far that we were able to capture enough properties along University that it would make any sense. But I think Century, we may have the opportunity there.
Okay, so, well, any questions or comments from the Plan Commission members? So what are you ready for this motion to send it to the Finance Committee or Council, or you want to work on this more and then bring it back here?
Well, I think what we're asking for tonight is just concept review. You know, does it make sense for us to look at doing an amendment at this point? There's still going to be a lot of work to determine exactly which parcels are going to be subtracted and added, and I'm sure that is going to change a few times before this thing gets done. But what we were just asking is, do you agree that we should take a look at it right now? And we would need to get an amendment to our TIF contract with our planning consultants, because they usually help us prepare the amendment that we end up submitting to the DOR.
Okay, so let's hear from the Plan Commission members. Anybody?
And there would have to be a public hearing before the Plan Commission for any amendment
Yes.
coming up.
Yep.
And again, just inclusion in a TID does not necessarily mean that we anticipate that particular parcel will redevelop. It's just helping us get contiguity in the district to capture those parcels we think are likely to redevelop. And if we can do it, then we are capturing more increment for the district that really helps some of the infrastructure projects that we anticipate.
Yep.
Okay, so is there someone who is vehemently opposed to it? Let's start this way. I think it looks like I know it started because of that restaurant going out of business, but looks like a good idea. So, okay, well, I guess nobody seems to be opposed to it, so we can.
You'll have to update your documents here. None of the, well, a great deal of the properties are not owned by who's listed anymore.
Yeah, we asked
It's
Jeff
pretty old.
about that, and he said that he needs to use the base assessed value. So when we're subtracting properties, we use the base value of the properties that we're subtracting, and that I know that we use the base value of the properties that we're adding back in, and so that is why he's used the former landowner name. But I do agree that it's kind of confusing. I had the same question.
Yeah, that doesn't quite seem right.
I'll talk with them about that.
That's good, Dan. So it helps. Dan knows the real estate, Abby. So, okay. You have enough input now, Abby, then?
Yeah, and if you're comfortable with us putting it on the council agenda for an initial discussion, we would take that as soon as next week.
Do you need a motion for that, or it's okay, just the comments?
I'll make a motion to recommend taking it to the concept to the council.
I'll second that.
Okay. Okay, any other further question or comments? Otherwise, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passed. We are on to item number 4. Concept review the options for trailhead at Pheasant Branch Conservancy 6612 Century Avenue, Abbey.
Yes.
By the way, you
so-
have done a great job by putting the pros and cons and everything, and looks good.
Thank you. Well, Vanderwall did the concepts for us, and they also developed the pros and cons sheet. So we have to give kudos to Jeff Maloney and the team at Vanderwall for that. What we included in your packet is 4 initial concepts. These have not gone to Conservancy lands yet. They also have not been reviewed by the Friends of Pheasant Branch or the Ped Bike Transit Committee. And so those are all steps that we need to take as this proceeds. The reason that we included it on the Plan Commission agenda now is because we are now being driven on a pretty tight timeline due to the DNR grant that we're applying for. I think it's a great opportunity for the city to potentially get the first phase of the trailhead, which would be just the parking lot and the pedestrian bridge, paid for using only the Century Avenue Bridge, which we've already gotten approval from the council to proceed down that path as our match. So we don't have any budgeted funds right now for design of the trailhead or construction of the trailhead. We're trying to seize an opportunity that has presented itself because of the Century Avenue Bridge project. But our application deadline for the DNR grant is May 1st. We have met with the DNR staff, Matt Amundsen and I, and she was very complimentary of the project, and she felt that it could be packaged with the Century Avenue Bridge. It would probably score pretty high. The city got a grant to acquire the trailhead property from Jacob Klein previously, and the DNR likes to fund improvements to properties that they have helped put into public ownership. So we think it's a pretty good opportunity for us. The concern is, depending on how we decide to position the shelter and the parking primarily, those will significantly change the cost estimates, and we need a pretty firm cost estimate to put into the grant application. So that's why we're kind of all of a sudden bringing this forward to several committees at once to review. There in the pros and cons sheet, there were a couple items I just wanted to do a quick update on. One is on the option D, which is where the parking lot is on the west side of the creek, and then we would put the trailhead into the Conservancy area. We had listed as a con that may complicate the DNR stewardship grant. And Matt Amundsen has met with our contact at the DNR now, and they have said that that would not be a concern for them. I will say, though, that we also heard from the adjacent property owner, the owner of Stagecoach Trails, who we purchased the site from, and he has significant concerns with option D. He feels that it was not in keeping with what the city proposed we would do with the site when we bought the land, and he said he wouldn't have sold it to us if it were just for a parking lot. So I just wanted to lay that on the table too, that there are some concerns there. Our recommendation is to provide feedback on the options and then refer this to CLC And then CLC would need to work with the Friends of Pheasant Branch and also refer it to Ped Bike Transit. That's
Okay.
it.
Okay, so let's start with the input from the commissioners.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question with in regards to the grant. You said that the grant would take care of the first phase, and we'd use our bridge construction as our match. That would take care of the first phase, which you anticipate would be the parking lot. Does the grant have stipulations then as to the length of time it can take you to get from phase 1 to phase 5 or whatever? I mean, is there an expectation if you take this grant, you need to have this done in 2 years?
No, there's no expectation. And it's the same way with the land acquisition. When we got the grant to acquire the land, we showed them a trailhead concept that looked pretty similar to option A. And there was no expectation of a time frame in which it would get developed. And it would be the same for the parking lot and the pedestrian bridge. We could get a grant for that, and they wouldn't hold us to, you know, a 5-year or a 10-year time frame for getting the shelter done.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Any other questions from the commissioners? Okay, so John Schaefer and then Kurt Paulson.
I think Kurt was first.
Oh, he was? Okay. I didn't. Okay.
Oh, but you're chair of PRFC, so I'll defer to you first.
Okay, so, I mean, there's multiple, I like the plans. What I don't like is Plan B and C, because it throws the building, which is basically a park shelter, out to the road and turns it into a building. I don't think we need a building to highlight that this is here. There's a beautiful conservancy, and I like A and D, partly because it puts the concept of the shelter away from the street. And if we think about a shelter, this is not a restaurant, it's not a guest house, it's not a museum. It's essentially a shelter, and having it right on the road doesn't make a lot of sense. And we spent a lot of time on PRFC talking about shelters, what they should be and should not be. And they should basically essentially be supporting the function of what the park is about. And so it's a little premature to talk about these structures because I don't know what the concept, but basically I think they're bathrooms and a place to get under the shade, put on your hiking shoes. And so that's why both A and D seem to me much preferable to the B and C and throwing the shelter out towards the front. What I don't want to see is from Park's perspective is that this shelter building turns into something more fundamental and formidable than simply a shelter. They get expensive, I know about that. So I personally, I think D is a beautiful solution to it all. I like A, B, and C. Putting the structure up front just to me doesn't fit the concept of what a shelter should be about.
Thank you, John. You are done?
Yep, I'm done.
Okay. Kurt and then
Well,
Randy Bruce.
So I guess the first question I ask John is, should we also refer it to PRFC? Do you want to have a crack at it in your committee now, because since we're on a compressed time schedule?
I think it would be a good idea. I don't think there's a big issue, but it really, the whole nature of what this structure is about is if we're turning this into something that's a location, as opposed to just passing through to get onto the paths, it becomes a little bit like a park. And I think it'd be nice to just talk about it a little bit.
Okay.
I think I agree with you, Kurt. It should go to PRFC as well.
So
I'm with you.
what I was going to say is, yeah, so part of the concept in the more extensive drawings suggests that there might be a patio or kind of a gathering space on these, and that's part of that design question that we'll have to come to, is whether it's just supposed to become primarily bathrooms and interpretive signage and kind of a small building, or that it would have some sort of community education space or gathering space or patio for receptions. That's a different concept. So, you know, I originally was drawn to having it closer to the street to keep with kind of urban design, but actually John's just convinced me that if it's going to be primarily a park shelter, then option A seems better. My own view is that option D should just be immediately taken off the table. I don't think there's any way that fits the concept, because to get to the park shelter, you'd have to walk across the bridge. So if there is anything like eating area or reception area, that you'd be carrying food and drinks across. That's not, and I see virtually no way that the Friends would approve of option D. As a member of the Friends, I would certainly oppose it.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's, as Abby mentioned, it kind of goes against the purpose to which we bought the property and the design we showed Mr. Klein and the grant. So I'm fine with A, B, or C. I was originally drawn to B, but I would defer to John and accept A. And the advantage of A is then the back end of this goes right to the bridge and right into the trail network.
Yeah.
And so you could put some interpretive signage or even some ecological education stations for kids or school programs in the back, and that yeah.
Randy and then John Schaefer.
I thought that John's comments were spot on. I like A and D. Of the two, just from a public's perspective, I think the D seems like a good solution. Notwithstanding, previous plans, I don't know what to say about that, but I actually kind of like the building being removed from the parking area. I think it makes it feel a little bit more natural, in a more natural setting. It does take a bit of a walk from the parking lot, but I mean, the purpose of this is to enter into the Conservancy anyways. And so it kind of seems to me to make sense.
That's a great point, Randy. If somebody has a problem walking from parking lot to Conservancy, what in the world they're doing there? So John?
Yeah, I concur with both of you guys. I think that's the idea, is that this should be the entryway into the Conservancy through this building. From Park standpoint, and thank you, Kurt, for suggesting you send it to Parks. I mean, we deal with issues of spaces that get taken up with reservations and the logistics of dealing with this stuff, and then somebody suddenly takes ownership of the building and the public doesn't have access to it. I think this is not really a park, and this really should be a gateway, not really thought of in that sense. So, but yeah, I like it away from the road personally, but thanks.
Okay, are you done, John?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see, anybody? Okay, Jen
And
Murray.
Murray.
Yes, go ahead, Jen.
Hi, I also like concept A the best out of these concepts for all the reasons that have been stated, but also because I do know as a user there is not a lot of access to, let's say, water fountain right near this trail. The next step up near where the swimming pool is, you can come up and you have to walk quite a ways or come up the hill to get to water. And so, or you have to go all the way back around to the other end of the park here. So I think that would be nice to have a little bit closer access to trail users to a water fountain. And then the other piece of this that I like is the opportunity here where we know this was one of the places where, Middleton started, really right directly across the street, or kitty corner here off Branch Street. And so, thinking through also from a historic preservation or a historic context in this area, I think there might be an opportunity with to have some components of the historic, honoring the history of Middleton, sort of right near the parking lot there, and the building, and not having the building be across the creek. I don't necessarily like the building up against the street either. I think one reason I really don't like it is it's a busy street, and I just think if it was a shelter that's actually going to be used, a little space between the street, the parking lot being there might buffer a little bit of the sound. And just make it a little bit of a nicer shelter. So that's my thought on it. I really like A.
Great points, Jennifer. So now you're done? Okay, so the next one is Kurt Paulson.
Yeah, so Jen's comments made me realize that we do have adopted design guidelines for the historic area. And I don't have them right in front of me, but Abby, do the design guidelines talk about building placement? And would this kind of be preferred closer to the street for the design guidelines? And I know it would certainly suggest kind of historic finishings.
Yes.
Yeah, and I guess the only other question is that I know David Reed, a number of years ago suggested that the building near Quick Trip, that kind of historic outbuilding, I forget what it's called. He thought that would be a good, actually, if we could move that as to the trailhead as kind of it's a historic building anyway. I don't know if that's possible, but I just want to throw that out there.
Blacksmith, and we spent a lot of money and time thinking and talking about it. I guess, yeah, that's a great point, yes. Anyone else?
So, sorry,
Kurt,
just if Abby could answer, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
Abby.
So we looked at the design guidelines again as it pertains to this property, because I had the same concern that we were talking about locating buildings closer to the street to create a street edge, engage the corner. We just had this conversation on the Common Ground site. And I wanted to make sure that we were following our own design guidelines that the city has approved for this district. And this actually came up during the conversation about the Conservancy apartment proposal, but I was flipping through the design guidelines, and I remember having a conversation with John Bino, the architect, and we couldn't find the reference that he was making during that meeting. But in section 2 of the design guidelines under architectural guidelines, it talks about building form and placement. And the guideline states that buildings should be located along public streets and public pathways. Buildings should be primarily rectangular in form, and entrances should connect to public rights of way. So for this site, I think that it does conform to the design guidelines because it's located along a public pathway. On the other site that we were looking at, I think it wouldn't comply because they were talking about locating the building along the creek corridor, the creek itself, with the path being opposite the creek. So I feel like we're giving consistent direction to both the private development and the city, and we can locate this further away from the road as long as it's along the public pathway.
Kurt, are you okay with that?
Yeah, thank you. And obviously we could have some nice design of trees in the front to kind of soften the parking lot at the street.
Okay,
thanks.
Anyone else from the Plan Commission? So, okay, so I would say John and Randy and Kurt, you're right on. My first preference is number 5, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And the second preference will be A, and B and C are out, or whatever the others are out. So I think knowing that the grant is not an issue, D would be the best in the short run and long run and every run. So that would be my preference. So I need now the motion for someone to make a motion and then send it to the various committees. And
so is the motion to recommend a particular design and rank order them, or just to refer to other committees? Because yeah.
Well, we could.
You want to take those separately?
We can. Okay, let's. The committees would have some say too, right? So, for the Plan Commission, I guess 5 is the first choice, and then 8.
Well,
so
if we seem to all agree that options, I'm not sure what option 5 is.
Oh, no, I mean D, I apologize.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
I think we're all in agreement that B and C are probably out.
Yes.
Can we
Okay,
just,
so let's make a motion that, our preference is A and D, and then send it to the various committees.
Bruce has his hand raised.
Bruce? Go ahead, Bruce.
I think that takes care of it. I'm not comfortable ranking them specifically until we get more input.
Okay, okay. Yeah, let's just say A and D, and then, okay, I make that motion, Abby. So send it to PRFC, CLC, and Bike and Ped. Need a second.
Schaefer
Okay.
second.
Second by John Schaefer. Any further questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, unanimous. Need a motion. Well, anybody has anything else to say? One of the good things is that the vaccinations are moving forward, and I think hopefully soon we will be able to meet each other and in person, and would be great. I think there's still, when I look at the county numbers and the Wisconsin numbers, boy, they are coming down. That makes everybody happy, I'm sure. So anybody else want to share anything? It's not the agenda items. Okay, need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, need a second.
Second, Slavish.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Well, we are adjourned, and have an awesome evening. Thank you. You guys are great.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you.